Hey YouTube and everyone else, welcome back. This is the third video in my series of how to improve Halo Wars for the sequel. This video's subject is on buildings. Halo Wars 1 had a great design for base building, and I think that this is worth keeping. What I would add is making the buildings dual purpose. Another game series that had this feature was the Battle for Middle-earth series by EA Games. In the first game, they had an identical system for base building, but bases couldn't be increased in size. They made up for this by having 4 different types of bases, each with its own advantages and disadvantages. Here's how the dual-purpose buildings worked in the Battle for Middle-earth. Each faction had 2 resource production structures, and each gave different discounts. So a player going for cavalry would get discounts on cavalry by building lots of farms, whereas iron forges gave bonuses to upgrades. This could work in Halo Wars by having resource buildings have 2 or more upgrade options, similar to the defensive turrets upgrades. They could be changed, and the upgrades could increase variables like the rate of supply, or give discounts to certain buildings or units, etc. Multiple barracks could give discounts to infantry. Multiple tech buildings like reactors or temples give bonuses to special forces. This sort of system allows extra variables to be attached to existing game elements without needing to increase the number of elements themselves. It will also create more complex combos that will make the game more interesting and challenging. I would add 3 new types of buildings, change the barracks, and remove the shield generators for the Covenant. The new buildings are the Armory, Artillery Pad, and Cover. The Armory researches all infantry upgrades. All 6 or 7 kinds of infantry will now be trained in the barracks, and their respective upgrades will be lumped together in a separate single building. The Covenant would call the Armory equivalent something like a sanctum or a library. The Artillery Pad provides constant fire support to units. In Halo Wars 1, there were the Covenant Mega-Turret plasma launchers which could be garrisoned in multiplayer, and this structure functions in a similar way, although without needing to be garrisoned. The differences are its range and recharge time. The old versions had an inner, but not an outer range limit, and this has both, inner and outer. The recharge time will be much quicker than before, because artillery in real life can fire very rapidly. The attack would be a mid-range area attack, and upgrades would do things like shrink the area affected, increase the number of shells fired, reduce resource costs, etc. The UNSC has a simple cannon, and the Covenant their plasma launchers, and both begin only able to attack ground targets. Both factions can upgrade their pads to a short or long-range version. More on that in a second, though. Cover would be built by engineer units as their special ability. This will allow a build-anywhere unit and structure, which can be upgraded. The upgrade would simply be something like a machine gun, rocket, or missile launcher to give the cover a bonus attack against certain units, again, like the turrets in the last game. So for bases, I would have these 7 buildings available to each faction. A resource production structure with 2 possible upgrades. A tech level structure. A barracks, which trains all 7 types of infantry. An armory, which upgrades all 7 types of infantry. A vehicle depot that trains and upgrades all ground vehicles. An artillery pad for fire support, and an air pad for all air support. The armory barracks separation keeps infantry together and infantry upgrades together. The vehicle depots, air pads, and artillery pads, on the other hand, can have both units and upgrades, like in the last game, because the units are fewer in number. The air and artillery pads also make space for various fire support upgrades like the MAC gun or airstrikes. For the UNSC, the command center would train Spartans and Warthogs, as well as have an upgradable electric fence to stun and damage enemies adjacent to the base, similar to the flashbang ability for flamethrowers from the first game. Spartans would be upgraded here, but Warthogs would be upgraded at the vehicle depot. The other slots would have upgrades for the army as a whole, such as enhancements to buildings' hit points, reduction in reinforcement times, and increasing army size by upgrading the base size, i.e. a level 1 base adds 10 to the population cap, level 2 adds 20, etc. UNSC engineer units, the Cyclops, would be trained at the reactor, again keeping with the dual-purpose building concept. Artillery pads would be upgradable to a mini-MAC like we saw in Halo Reach, or a nuclear missile silo. The MAC gun would have a shorter inner and outer range and be able to attack both air and ground units. The nuclear missile silo would be long range and include an area effect of radiation poisoning. Air pads would handle MAC gun upgrades, carpet bomb, etc. For the Covenant, the Temple will train hero units, special forces, and all their upgrades. The main Citadel would, like the UNSC, train base defenses like shield generators to repel attacks, because in this version shield generators will not be separate buildings, they'll be an integral part of the Citadel. Large-scale army upgrades like population caps and scout units like the Ghost and Chopper will be trained here as well. The gravity lift will be retained, and the Scarab will still be a Citadel-trained unit. Engineers would still be trained at the air pad, and the plasma turret would be upgradable to a long-range anti-aircraft turret like we saw in Halo Reach, or a short-range Spire, also in Reach. I'll have a more thorough description of building specifics in my 7th video on organizing the factions. So that's it for buildings. I hope my diagrams helped illustrate what I was saying, and next video will be on fire support. Leave all questions in the comment section, and I will see you guys next time.